Tonight's presentation was actually inspired by discussions that followed recent viewing of Climb to Glory, which is a documentary by filmmaker Chris Anthony. We're always looking for new ways to share our enthusiasm for the 10th Mountain Division, and his online presentation prompted us to go virtual as well. So here we are. Tonight, we're excited to be able to share information about a few different 10th Mountain Division repositories and institutions, as well as some more private collections. We're going to share the types of items in our collections and talk about some of the events we may have supported in the past or have planned for the future. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end. So go ahead and submit your questions in the chat room at any time, and then we'll get to them later. This presentation is being recorded, so we'll be able to share it for anyone who wasn't able to attend tonight. I'll also be sharing a document that has all of our contact information, as well as guidelines if you have items you might like to donate. And I'll post a link to that in the chat room later. My name is Keli Schmid. I am the archivist for the half of the 10th Mountain Division Resource Center located at Denver Public Library. With me tonight are Chris.Juergens, who is the Anschutz Assistant Curator of Military History and Heritage at History Colorado, and the other half of the 10th Mountain Division Resource Center. Flint Whitlock, who is a military historian, author, founder of the 10th Mountain Division Living History Display Group, and docent at the Broomfield Veterans Memorial Museum. Sep Scanlon, who is the museum director at the 10th Mountain Division and Fort Drum Museum. And David Little, who is a military historian, president of the 10th Mountain Division Living History Display Group, and currently the historian and vice president of the 10th Mountain Division Foundation. The 10th Mountain Division Resource Center, which you can see behind me, which is now overseen by the 10th Mountain Division Foundation, originated in 1987 when the National Association of the 10th Mountain Division designated Denver Public Library and History Colorado as joint repositories of historical materials from the 10th Mountain Division in World War II. An advisory committee was established to oversee the direction of the Resource Center and is currently chaired by Dan Whittemore, who is a 10th Mountain Division descendant and has worn many hats within the 10th Mountain Division community. One of Dan's visions as chair has been to open advisory committee meetings to institutions outside the Resource Center in pursuit of collaborative efforts to share the legacy of the 10th Mountain Division. This presentation is one example of that collaboration. Denver Public Library is the first designated destination for letters, photos, maps, movies, artwork, diaries, journals, manuals, books or booklets, and really any two-dimensional item of graphic, photographic, or written nature. We currently house approximately 1,000 10th Mountain Division collections, ranging in size anywhere from just one letter up to over 30 boxes, all of which I use to answer the 20 to 30 reference questions I get every month. I'd like to show you some samples of the materials we have, so I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. And hopefully you can all see that all right. I'm getting a nod, that's a good sign. This first item that I wanted to share with you is a booklet that was handed out to soldiers to warn them of the dangers of malaria and advise them on how to avoid getting bitten by mosquitoes. You may recognize the artwork was actually done by Theodore Geisel, also known as Dr. Seuss. I didn't realize until I was working in the archives that Dr. Seuss did a lot of illustrations for the military at the time. So the booklet is, although it's really important because it was saving lives, it's kind of fun too. The next item I want to show you is a sketchbook that was owned by Arnold Halliwell. And he carried it around with him in his knapsack and would, pull it out and make sketches of the things that he saw as the division made its way through Italy. And one of the really neat things about this sketchbook is he was hit by shrapnel while he had the sketchbook in his rucksack. And it may have saved him from a pretty serious injury. It's hard to tell from this picture because we have leaves of tissue paper separating the pages to preserve the drawings, but the shrapnel tore all the way through and really made a mess. So I'm sure he was grateful. He even made a little note. Some other items that we have are souvenirs. Like this one, it's a satin pillowcase that was available for purchase at Camp Hale that soldiers could send back home to their loved ones to let them know they were thinking of them. And then, of course, we have lots of correspondence, like this example of Victory Mail or V-Mail, which was a letter that was to be written on pre-printed stationery. It had to fit within the parameters of that page. Then those pages were photographed, sent overseas on microfilm. And then when that microfilm arrived back in the United States, it was printed out on 3x5 little sheets of paper and mailed out in tiny envelopes. In recent years, our efforts have been focused on making resources available online. We now have over 3,000 photographs, over 250 oral histories, and 7 digitized films that were recently used in a Rocky Mountain PBS episode of Colorado Experience that was about Camp Hale. So some pretty neat footage there. This is actually training at Camp Hale. We don't currently have any in-person events planned at the library because the main building is still closed to the public. But in the past, we've hosted author events and exhibits showcasing 10th Mountain Division maps, sculptures, books, and photographs. We also have a room on the 5th floor of the library that's dedicated to telling the story of the 10th with photographs, books, sculptures, and things of the sort. And now I would like to introduce Chris Juergens. He is the Anschutz Assistant Curator of Military History and Heritage at History Colorado, which is the first designated destination for the 10th Mountain Division artifacts, including uniforms, skiing and climbing gear, weaponry, camping, and other types of equipment. Chris?
Folks. So thanks for that introduction, Kelly, and good to see such a great turnout here tonight. So as Kelly mentioned, I'm the Anschutz Assistant Curator of Military History and Heritage at History Colorado, and that's a brand new position. I'm the newest member of the 10th Mountain family in that sense, I guess, of the presenters tonight. And in a nutshell, I'm in charge of the military holdings at History Colorado in general, which includes items all the way back from the American Revolution to Vietnam. Currently, and sort of the most cohesive collection that we have among our military holdings is actually the 10th Mountain Division collection. And so I've been spending a lot of time working on that. And for the first year, that's sort of been my primary focus, is to get that collection fully cataloged, assessed in terms of what we have, and make it more accessible to the public in terms of research and just online accessibility too, to kind of discover what we all have. So as Kelly mentioned, we are the primary repository for anything World War II 10th Mountain related that is a 3D artifact. And we have everything from, US Army equipment, so equipment the soldiers actually wore themselves, a variety of uniforms and different kinds of, boots and belts and rucksacks and mountain tents and what have you. We also have a good number of captured items. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, souvenirs were a popular pastime for soldiers when they had some downtime, and they brought back items belonging formerly to their German adversaries, or most famously to Benito Mussolini when they had a chance to grab some souvenirs from his retreat on Lake Garda. And so we have quite a few items to represent kind of that war trophies, war souvenirs arena as well. And then most famously, we also have an M29 weasel in our collection, a Studebaker weasel, which is unfortunately not currently on display, but is available for some kind of future event. So the daily tasks that we do at History Colorado focus mainly on cataloging at this point. So it's kind of going through the collection, assessing everything to make sure that it's stored properly, linking provenance from the original donors, and who are usually the soldiers themselves, to the objects, and taking photographs of everything, that sort of thing. Because when, as Keli mentioned, when the 10th Mountain Division Resource Center started, that was in 1987. So obviously quite a bit has changed in terms of technology since then, and so we're still playing a little bit of catch up. Because we have over 2,500 objects that have been donated that are directly linked to former members of the 10th Mountain Division. I'm going to share a few images here with you. Let's see if I can get this going. All right, do you see some boots?
We
All
see
right, perfect.
boots.
So as an example of some of the equipment that we have and some of the process that we're going through, we want to make sure that we have nice, high quality image in the catalog. That makes it a lot more accessible for the public, and you'd be able to search by the terms used at the time. So for example, these are the famous ski mountain boots. And then we also have, this kind of speaks both to the US Army equipment and captured souvenirs. That's actually a US Army pistol belt there, and attached to it is a German K98 Mauser ammunition pouch that the soldier in question captured and attached to his equipment. And then I want to speak a little bit about some of the initiatives that we've been pursuing at History Colorado that relate to the 10th Mountain Division. First and foremost is our World War II exhibit that was unveiled in November of last year, and it was to coincide with the 75th anniversary of the end of the war. Obviously, we're off by a couple months there, but at least the year is still right, and it was delayed by various COVID restrictions, but we were really happy to still be able to unveil it last year. And it's on the second floor in the History Colorado Center. If you ever get a chance to come downtown, definitely come and take a look. And we had them organized sort of geographically from left to right. You have the Pacific Theater, then you have the home front, and then you have the European Theater. In the Pacific Theater, the so-called meatball flag that you can see there, the battle flag of Japan, was captured on the island of Kiska by a 10th Mountain Trooper. A couple of the weapons there as well were brought back by 10th Mountain soldiers. And then of course the European case is full of items from the 10th Mountain Division, including probably most notably one of Mussolini's personal fezzes that he was so fond of and famously photographed in a number of times. In addition to this World War II exhibit, we are pursuing a couple of other opportunities to make sure that our collection is accessible to the public and can be viewed in a couple of different arenas. At the History Colorado Center itself, I mean, we are on a pretty strict exhibit schedule. Things are planned years in advance, and so we don't really have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we would like to show. So we're looking into some other options on how we can present our collection. And one thing that we came up with at the end of last year as well is what we call a lending resource. So this is a new initiative that we've come up with, and the 10th Mountain Division is actually the focus of the very first one. And in a nutshell, it's a small traveling exhibit display that can be rented out by various institutions across the state of Colorado. It's currently restricted to Colorado because we actually use the state of Colorado library system to ship the items back and forth to keep it nice and affordable for everyone. But it's a number of original artifacts and some reproduced images and letters that tell the story of the 10th Mountain Division that can be exhibited at smaller institutions. And for example, for 3 months, it was exhibited at the Lake County Library up near Leadville. We also do a number of behind the scenes tours, and obviously given recent restrictions, we've done those mostly virtually. So here's an example of a virtual behind the scenes tour we did for members. And obviously here we're showcasing a whole bunch of different objects from the military collection, but there are a few items from the 10th Mountain Division there on the right side of the table. You might see a silver star, a combat infantryman badge. There's an epaulet from one of Mussolini's uniforms. And then that two-piece bow there that you see was actually from a 10th Mountain Division Scout sniper, Ralph Hulbert, who famously actually took a lot of images that we use in our promotions, including the image behind me there, as a color photograph that he took at Camp Hale. We are also pursuing, in terms of education, we're pursuing something called a trunk program, which is something History Colorado does for 4th grade classrooms around the state. And they've done many different programs in the past, kind of focused on Colorado history. And we added 10th Mountain to that list of topics that we can cover. And actually the 10th Mountain trunk is comprised of original artifacts, which is unusual because the other trunks tend to be reproductions. But we actually have a great number of duplicate artifacts or artifacts that were donated that were not donated by soldiers themselves, but had been purchased by someone. And so there's not, a lot of provenance associated with them. So they're perfect candidates for kind of more hands-on history. And so we selected, a number of representative, but also sturdy objects that can be sent to 4th grade classrooms around the state. They will read letters that are facsimiles copied from the archives at Denver Public Library. And then they get a chance to actually interact with original artifacts, and it really brings the history a lot closer to these classrooms and makes sure that the story of the 10th Mountain Division is told in classrooms across the state. Let's see, we also have, we obviously got a lot of requests coming in, and we address those as well. And I encourage you, if you have any questions about any particular kind of equipment, or if you're looking for objects associated with certain members of certain units, we can always take a look. We're making that database as accessible as possible and as complete as possible. So I please encourage you, if you have any questions, always reach out. That's what we're here for, and we can always take a look. In terms of our future and kind of what we're looking towards accomplishing down the road here, we're trying to foster some more cooperation with the other institutions that have the 10th Mountain Division items. And that's obviously, for example, what we're doing here tonight. And we're also, being the primary repository for any 3D artifacts, I want to make sure that if we have any duplicate offers coming in or anything like that, if there are other venues that might be more appropriate homes for objects, that we're well connected to that network of 10th Mountain history, that we can make sure that objects reach the right places and help tell that story across the United States. I should also note, it's not posted yet, but we will have an internship available later this year as well that will be focused on the 10th Mountain Division collection. So if you know of someone, or you are yourself an advanced undergraduate or a graduate student in history, that might be an opportunity coming along, and would be at the History Colorado Center actually working with the objects themselves. So that's something coming up later this year. And we're also, as I mentioned before, a big focus has been more online accessibility. And so one of the big things is that we're trying to make all the objects accessible via the Digital Public Library of America. is a very large database, and objects have to reach certain prerequisites in order to be featured there. And so we're making sure that our 10th Mountain entries are prioritized in terms of meeting those requirements and making them more accessible and searchable on this huge national database, so that people can find what they're looking for. And see, I think that's about it. So we help preserve this history and make sure it's well cataloged and accessible for all of you. The History Colorado Center, I should note, is fully open to the public. And you can now also, as long as it's a small enough group, you can also reach out to me in terms of requesting a proper in-person behind the scenes tour. As long as we are not overfilled in those areas, we absolutely can arrange that as well. So please do reach out, and I hope we can welcome you at the center soon. And I will turn it back over to Keli for Dana's video.
Thank you, Chris. Always so exciting to see what everybody else is up to, because we're geographically located so close together, but we don't get to share pictures and things that often. So I cannot recall now. I think I failed to mention the fact that Dana Mathios was going to be part of our presentation tonight. She is the curator and director of collections at the Colorado Snowsports Museum and Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, she had a scheduling conflict tonight, so she wasn't able to join us, but she created a piece to share with you all. So I will share my screen again.
Snowflakes are falling so fast, and winter has come now at last.
Oh, Are you all hearing it?
So this is Charles.
Yes.
Okay.
Minito.
Okay,
He's
good.
actually a World War I vet, but he became the founder of the National Ski Patrol. And when he learned that the Finnish army on skis took out an entire Russian tank division that invaded Finland in 1939, he kind of pointed out the fact that should America ever get invaded from the north, especially and in snow regions or in the mountains, that we didn't have a group of military that could protect us from it. It's pretty amazing.
It is. It's such an amazing story. I'm so glad that you're telling this story. It's going to be really amazing.
And your role is so important because as I've been as I've been stumbling through this whole thing, learning about it, that's when actually it was a little fourth grade girl goes, "Was there any women that were part of this?" I go, "Well, actually, there was about the 200 women that just learned about that were at Camp Hale."
Yeah, that's so cool.
Here's the
Thank
Hall
you
of Fame,
on behalf of women everywhere.
So here's the Hall of
that's so
Fame
cool.
area, which is really cool because it's interactive. So now everybody that's part of this is you can go on, it's touch screen, you can watch their video, learn about their history.
I love this. This is so cool. All the different ski
That's
boots.
their wall. It's
Like,
amazing, right? The engineering. But sometimes it's funny because they've taken steps in one direction and have to go back.
backwards.
Right? Remember like the rear entry boot?
Yeah.
Then you went back to
Something
a
a little bit more
four-foot
similar
right?
to that.
So it's gone off path a few times and then come
And all the
back.
different bindings.
Yeah. I grew up with safety straps where you crash
Yeah.
and your skis stay attached to you and hit you in the
What
head.
that sounds like not a safe thing at all. It's fashion at its finest.
There's a great video that takes place on this TV that is, goes through all the history and years of fashion.
Yeah.
And this part is really cool. I think this is all the competition we grow and this interactive thing. So we
You get to
go to the year.
Yeah.
And then we can find world championships, Colorado heroes.
Hello.
Hello.
Who dat?
Pretty neat.
Oh my gosh, you go through all those pictures. So cool. Oh, such good memories.
And of course, then you probably recognize a few
Yeah.
things in here.
Yeah. I love this exhibit. It's so fun. And the globe, this globe next to that was Filmair's globe.
Yeah.
Like 1981, and they're still
got
so
bigger.
similar. They got bigger, they got taller. But
How much does that weigh?
it's heavy. I never weighed it actually, but
Is it crystal?
it is crystal, and it's funny when you travel with it through the airport, it just shows up as this big black blob on the X-rays
Oh, 'cause it's
because it
lead.
is it's
Right,
lead,
right.
and they freak out. Oh my gosh, they're like, open this bag, what's in here? And I'm like, it's just nothing.
Wow, I never thought about that.
It's pretty funny actually. Pretty funny. I love looking like the old chairlifts and like when you put your skis. I mean, we've never put our skis on this anymore. You know.
They had a safety bar, but they also had these wool blankets on it.
Oh.
So if you look in the old movies, a great one, Sun Valley Serenade, you see them get on the chairlift and they roll the bar over them, and this beautiful blanket just coats their legs and
Keeps them warm. Oh my gosh, that
So
sounds so nice.
Yeah.
Oh, we should bring that back. That sounds wonderful.
There's a lot of things we should bring back.
Right?
Our past that they nailed back then.
They nailed it. They thought about all those things.
The smoke shining back on the hill. What's happened you can't understand. There's two silver keys in your hand. Two boys upon profiler's snow.
Hi everyone, my name is Dana Mathios, and I'm the Curator and Director of Collections with the Colorado Snowsports Museum, which is located in Vail, Colorado. I've been with the museum for just under 6 years, and I'm in charge of managing our off-site storage facility that's in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, which is where I am right now. Our collection consists of about 15,000 artifacts and archival materials that pertain to Colorado's rich snowsports history, including about 1,000 10th Mountain Division items. Our permanent 10th Mountain Division exhibit is currently one of the most comprehensive 10th Mountain Division exhibits in the world. The display pays tribute to the ski troopers of World War II and celebrates their lasting legacy post-war and the impact they had on the snowsports industry we all know and love today. The Colorado Snowsports Museum is always working on projects to better tell the story of the 10th Mountain Division. Right now, we are seeking any and all materials on members of the 10th Mountain Division to create a digital and interactive touchscreen database for our visitors to research 10th Mountain Division veterans right then and there at the museum. We are looking, more specifically, for donations of photos, video, letters, scrapbooks, and any other archival materials or media you see fit for this project. The main goal is to collaboratively tell the story of the 10th Mountain Division, but most importantly, tell the story of the people within the 10th Mountain Division. We've been working closely with the 10th Mountain Division Foundation, descendants, and we'll work with everyone included in this webinar to create a collaborative space to share these stories. If this sounds like something you might be interested in contributing to and or helping us with, please contact me. You can find my contact at the end of this video. In addition to this project, we are also fundraising to better encompass the story of the women at Camp Hale in our exhibit. We are asking for donations to help with the research, interpretation, and fabrication of this important addition to our display. For the most part, the story has been largely missing from our exhibits, and we're hoping to correct this. Right now, we do have on display a scrapbook from a WAC that was stationed at Camp Hale. Her name was Mary Davis, but we feel we can share a lot more about this story with our visitors. If this sounds like a project you might be interested in helping us with, again, please contact me, and my contact information will be at the end of this video. Lastly, at our resource center, which is where I am right now, I'm working hard on rehousing our 10th Mountain Division rucksack collection in order to ensure that these packs are stored in a more preservationally minded manner. Behind me, you can see packs that I have pulled for inventory and evaluation, which will include conducting condition reports, photographing these items, and getting them into our online database. My next step is to fill the packs out with acid-free materials to better keep their shape and to remove creases. Our goal at the Resource Center is to protect these items and many more for future generations to learn from. We are grateful to have received funding to complete this project through the Grenwood Fund, and we're hoping to have it completed by the end of this year. To close, I just wanted to invite you all to check out the Colorado Snowsports Museum and Hall of Fame's social media platforms as well as our website. We recently launched a digital resources tab of our website that offers several resources on the 10th Mountain Division as well as snowsports history in general. In addition to this, we are very active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We invite you to join us there in helping us fulfill our mission. And if anyone is curious, I am now standing at the Resource Center right in front of our ski boot collection. Right here, this is the section that holds most of our oldest boots in the collection, including 10th Mountain Division ski boots. And right here is a prime example of a 10th Mountain Division mountain boot.
Now we're going to hear from Flint Whitlock and David Little. Flint, as I said earlier, is a military historian, author, and founder of the 10th Mountain Division Living History Display Group. And he's going to talk to us about the Broomfield Veterans Memorial Museum, where he's a docent. And David Little is a military historian, 10th Mountain Division Foundation Vice President and Historian, and President of the 10th Mountain Division Living History Display Group. Thanks, guys.
I come to this group from several different roles. My original role was with the Living History Group. I took over from Flint a long number of years ago. He and I got Living History started almost 40 years ago here in Colorado. It's spread across the US, primarily in the Midwest, where we continue to have a chapter, and we have members on the Eastern Seaboard as well. Living History is taking the uniforms from Chris's collection, or actually in private hands, and the documents and two-dimensional items from Keli's collection, and we actually put the uniforms on and talk to people about what it was like to train at Camp Hale and combat in Italy. Our primary focus is to be educational in function, but in a different manner than a traditional museum. working with Living History, you can open up a soldier's pack and find out how he put his sleeping bag in the pack, and the fact that he put his canteen inside his sleeping bag to keep it from freezing at Camp Hale's nice cold weather. We do a number of these exhibits across the country in the course of a year. Our next exhibit that's coming up is going to be for the U.S. Army at Fort Carson, Colorado, for the Army birthday. And the 10th Mountain Division had ties to Fort Carson, which was Camp Carson during World War II. So we will be appearing to talk to the current soldiers at Fort Carson about the history of the Army in Colorado and providing a 10th Mountain exhibit, several soldiers in original uniforms. We do this also at public fairs. We've done this for schools, almost any public or semi-public event that you can imagine where it would be appropriate to have this. We can arrange, in many cases, to have a 10th Mountain exhibit brought out. Currently, our population base is heaviest in the Midwest, Illinois and Indiana, and here in Colorado, from Cheyenne down to Pueblo, Colorado. So those are the things that Living History does. We do, between the two primary locations, about 25 or 30 events a year. The uniforms and equipment that we use are almost all original. We have contracted with Hollywood costume manufacturers to reproduce some of the uniforms that are too rare, too valuable to go out and crawl around in the grass in. Chris would cringe if he saw what we did with original uniforms 40 years ago. But we try to make this as interactive and first person as we possibly can. The 10th Martin soldiers had an interesting life, and their training was not like anything else in the Army. And this is an opportunity for descendants and other interested parties to actually learn what Grandpa did, to see what the tent was that he slept in during the D series, and to find out how heavy that Garand rifle was. At 9 pounds, it's pretty darn heavy. Other things that Living History has done is we've also participated in staff rides up at Camp Hale, where we have taken interested groups through the camp and actually talked about it, again, from a first-person perspective, what it was like for a soldier to get off the train at Camp Hale and where the train station was and what that initial impact might have been. And then talking about the march and what the equipment looked like and how much it weighed as the soldier marched from the rail depot and the warehouse down to his barracks, which were 2.5 miles away from where he was picking up his 100+ pounds of equipment. We have done this for the Army, we have done this for the Forest Service, and we do this for descendants and other interested parties. So if you're unfamiliar with the camp and can spend a couple of hours with us, we may be able to arrange a tour of Camp Hale unlike anything else you've seen. The last piece that the Living History Group has done for the 10th Mountain family is about 25 years ago, we assumed the responsibilities for hosting and organizing the Memorial Day ceremonies. The 10th Mountain Foundation is the official host, but the organizing behind it has been handled by the 10th Mountain historians from the Living History Group. So they do the prep and the ordering of the wreaths and the order of the ceremony and transporting the bleachers and whatever else is necessary to make things happen. The second role that I come to you as is from the 10th Mountain Division Foundation, where I serve as the chairman for the Public Resources Committee, or the team, which primarily is Denver Public Library and History Colorado. But it does also provide grants to other museums and organizations like the Colorado Ski and Snowsports Museum to expand their 10th Mountain exhibits. History Colorado Denver Public Library are our primary responsibilities, but we work with other museums around the country and other groups to help tell this story. So if you have a local group, and recently we've heard about a museum in Alaska that is interested in doing a 10th Mountain exhibit, put them in touch with us. Through the Foundation's website, there is a grant process where we can assist these folks in getting things started. And we can refer them to Denver Public Library for photo resources and to History Colorado for uniform resources. And sometimes there are things that those groups cannot provide. And Living History also has a program to help support those kind of activities. But to all of you out there, we highly recommend that you support the 10th Mountain Division Resource Center, primarily Denver Public Library for two-dimensional artifacts, and History Colorado for those three-dimensional artifacts. And if they are unable to use them, or they've found that they're duplicates, they will help find a good home for these items. So we're very much supportive of what the public resource side is, especially History Colorado and Denver Public Library. There are a couple of projects that are coming up in the future, enhancements to what Keli uses primarily. We've had a database that I maintained for a number of years after our veterans turned it over, and then we turned it over to Denver Public Library to maintain. And this database lists almost 33,000 soldiers who served with the division between 1941 and 1945. Unfortunately, it does not include the modern 10th Mountain soldiers or the 10th Infantry Division that wore the same patch without the mountain tab in the 1950s. But we do have this information on 33,000 guys, and working with the 99th Infantry, the Norwegian Americans that also trained at Camp Hale, and with a team from UCLA, we're trying to expand this database to include other databases that are somewhat publicly accessible, including the National Archives and some others around the country. Ideally, we're going to have the resource that Keli uses enhanced with things like the date a soldier signed his enlistment papers and what his job was when he signed up as a civilian joining the 10th Mountain Division or joining the Army for that very first time. Things that might be able to help fill in the history of your grandfather or great-grandfather as you're developing the story of his life and his time with the 10th Mountain. This is a cooperative project that's likely to take several years. We're having to write some artificial intelligence programs that will be able to go to the databases, match them to our soldiers' names and serial numbers, and provide us with new information that we may not have had available in the past. So we're hoping that this is going to be a valuable addition to what Keli can draw on and what Chris can use to identify our soldiers. Second project we're working on, this is a personal one for me, is trying to digitize some of the battlefield maps from Keli and Chris's collections and overlay them with Google Maps. So if you take a trip to Italy, you can actually find on a Google map exactly where your father's or grandfather's unit might have been when they crossed the Po River or when they climbed Riva Ridge. We're trying to take those maps and overlay them with Google and make them downloadable for any user. Once that becomes available, both History Colorado and Denver Public Library will be resources. The last piece that the foundation team is working on is to digitize and distribute that Camp Hale staff ride that I'm willing to take you through personally, but I can't unfortunately meet with each of you anytime you want to go up there because they won't let me put a cabin on the property. But if we can provide this staff ride digitally, it should be something that you can download and take to Camp Hale and replay on your phone as you walk through what happened here, what's the layout of the camp, why did things happen in this location. These are some of the pieces that we're going to try to digitally enhance and make available through Denver Public Library, History Colorado, the U.S. Forest Service, and downloadable through the Foundation's website. So those are some of the initiatives that we have. If Flint is back and available, I'll let him talk about the Broomfield, Colorado, Broomfield Veterans Museum. I work with Flint at that museum as well. I'm a contractor working on their educational programs, duplicating something that Chris and the folks at Denver Public Library and History Colorado have done with the traveling trunk. We're preparing a traveling trunk on World War II in general, but because this is based on Colorado's military history, we're making sure the 10th Mountain Division artifacts work their way into that trunk as well. But Flint, are you out there?
Hello, everybody. All 72 of you, or however many are on the connection here. I've been a 10th Mountain descendant all my life and have been very deeply involved in telling the 10th story for over 40 years now. My first book, I've got 14 books, I can't believe it, that have been published, 10 of which are on World War II. And my first one was called Soldiers on Skis. I worked with my co-author, Bob Bishop, who was a veteran of the 10th. So I've been, very involved with the 10th in the last 40 years. One of the things I tried to do about 20 years ago was start what we call the Colorado Military History Museum. Dave Little was one of the first people on the board as a part of that effort. We never got it off the ground, which is very unfortunate. But about 4 years ago, I learned about the Broomfield Veterans Museum, which had actually started 20 years ago. And if you don't know Broomfield, it's halfway between Denver and Boulder on US 36. So it's easy to get there, whether you're going from Denver to Boulder or the opposite direction. It is located in what used to be the Broomfield Library, which was the Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Library. Ike had a very strong connection to Colorado. Mamie was from Denver. He married her. They had their honeymoon in the mountains near Boulder. The Fort Logan, which is in southwest Denver. Ike was stationed there in the 1920s. And after he became president, he often came back to Colorado to fish and relax in the mountains. So there's a very strong connection between Ike and Mamie and Colorado. And the fact that we're in this historic building is a real plus for us, I think. We have about 4,000 square feet, which is not a whole lot. We have stories of veterans from Colorado, beginning with the Civil War, all the way up through the global war on terrorism. Our biggest exhibit, you might say, is the World War II exhibit. We have 4 rooms that are dedicated to that. We've got the European Theater, the Pacific Theater, Women in Uniform, and the Colorado Home Front during World War II. Because of our space limitations, we can't have any one particular aspect dominate the others. So the 10th Mountain has a corner of the European Theater room. We have a mannequin, we have artifacts in a case. We have a medal that came from Mussolini's villa that was liberated by the 10th Mountain Division when they crossed Lake Garda. We have also every other week, every 2 weeks on Saturdays, we have what's called Coffee and Conversation. And if I recall correctly, this Saturday, Tom Dews, who was an ex-Marine colonel, but very involved with the 10th Mountain, is giving a talk on the 10th Mountain Division. So if you live anywhere in the Denver metro area and you want to hear Tom talk His talk will start at 10 o'clock this Saturday. If you want to know where the museum is located, or you want to know some more things about the museum, unfortunately, I'm a total Luddite when it comes to technology, so I didn't prepare any photos or videos or anything like this, but I will hold this up. And can you see this?
Yes, we can.
This is the website for the museum. It's broomfieldveterans.org. And if you go there, you'll find a tab called Virtual Tour, and it'll give you a tour of the museum. We are open on Thursdays and Saturdays at free admission. And we were recently voted the #1 thing to do in Broomfield when you're not dodging airplane parts that are falling out of the sky. Some of you may recall about a month ago, there was a United Airlines flight that took off from Denver and was flying over Broomfield when one of the engines exploded and the parts were raining down on Broomfield. Fortunately, no one was hurt and there wasn't any serious damage. But we're also interested in anyone who would like to be a volunteer at the museum. We have docents there. I'm the chairman of the display and exhibit committee, so I get to do what I love to do, and that is combine my writing and design skills to create exhibits and displays for the museum. And right now we have a wonderful exhibit up on the Civil War. Colorado, many people don't realize, was actually in the Civil War. And so we feature that in our current exhibit, which will be up until the middle of May, and then we'll have a new exhibit up. So if you'd like to volunteer at the museum, we have a lot of positions that are open, and we would welcome you to do that. You could either go through the website as I pointed out earlier, or you could email me, and I think Keli and Chris and everybody else, Dan, have my email address, which is flint.lock@q.com. But if you didn't catch that, go ahead and get in touch with one of those other people. So that's all I have at this point. I hope to see some of you at the museum in the near future.
Thank you so much, both David and Flint. It's, like I said earlier, it's so great to hear what everybody else has going on. I'm very excited now to introduce Sepp Scanlon, who is the museum director at the 10th Mountain Division and Fort Drum Museum. Fort Drum is the home of the current 10th Mountain Division. So Sepp is going to talk to us not only about artifacts from the division in World War II, but also those of the division today.
Thanks, Keli. I really appreciate it. And more importantly, for everybody for joining us tonight. I just want to share with everyone that it's a pretty profound network that we have here in the 10th Mountain Division. It's very lucky that we have so many people interested in the history, and that we have such a cooperative group that's willing to share so freely amongst the group and kind of be mutually supporting to get that history out there. So it's a really profound, both in the field and then to be a member and be able to participate in this way. So I really appreciate it. And to all my friends and colleagues out there, it's really great to do stuff like this with you, because we got a lot of good history to share and you make it all possible. As Keli mentioned, I'm the non-Colorado entity here. I'm located in upstate New York, 30 miles from the Canadian border, about an hour and a half north of Syracuse, New York, if you're familiar with the East Coast. And the mission for my museum is really to collect, preserve, and educate using the history of both the 10th Mountain Division, the current division stationed here, and the history of Fort Drum. And then we serve two primary audiences. And interestingly enough, our first audience is the active duty soldiers and their families and Army civilians here today. So we're really funded by the Army as a training resource for the soldiers so that they can understand and appreciate and learn the lessons of the past. After that, obviously, comes the American public. So we're always anxious to talk to whoever we can about the variety of the history that we have. In that, I have really three main areas that I cover. The oldest part is actually the history of the installation itself. So the United States Army has been in the county we are currently located since 1809. So if you're quick with math, that's about 207 years worth of Army history that I've got to cover in that section. Then I move onward to the 10th Mountain Division, and we really cover from, as I like to say, the idea generation in 1939, 1940, all the way to today. And actually, the very first tactical ski exercise ever held by the United States Army was held at Fort Drum in February of 1940, even before the division ski patrols. So everybody always asks, why is the 10th Mountain Division at Fort Drum? And I said, well, we wanted to come back to where the Army learned to ski. So that's how we ended up at Fort Drum. But counting that date to today, that gives us 51 years of history. In that 51 years of history, obviously World War II is very prominent, but we were also the lead division in Somalia began in 1992 and were there through 1994. We went into participated in the Haiti operation in 1994. We've done numerous humanitarian aid, whether it's natural disaster assistance or peacekeeping operations around the world. And then most notably, we were the first conventional division of the United States Army to enter Afghanistan in 2001. And we will be the last division to serve in Afghanistan when we withdraw here in September of 2021. So 20 years of history in Afghanistan. And then we also have a pretty deep history with the U.S. Army's involvement in Iraq. So that's a pretty big remit there. And then on top of that, the Army has also recently challenged me to be the technical collection holding the repository research collection, if you will, for winter and mountain warfare equipment. So there's a lot of crossover between those things, but you can see that's a pretty big remit for what we have to collect here. I'm very, very fortunate. I cannot be an expert in all those things, so make no mistake. About once a month, I'm on the phone with somebody like Flint or Dave. I'm always bugging Keli for photos or resources from the archives, and then Chris and I are talking pretty regularly as well. So it really is a tight network. So some unique things about me is I actually I am a Department of the Army civilian employee, and with that becomes a lot of different rules. So I'm not the standard museum. I don't have a friends organization. We can't even have a donation box because the government doesn't take, they take taxes, but they don't take gifts of money apparently. So I'm a little limited in some of those things, and donations for us can be very bureaucratic just because of the fact that we are the federal government. It's not that we can't take them, but we tend to be the longest processing of all our peers for any donations. When I'm offered donations, my first, if it's a World War II donation, my first preference is it end up in the resource center. If it's paper or archival material, it goes to Keli, or if it's other material, it can go to Chris. And I believe that is the case because that's what the World War II veterans established. I would not hazard to go against our World War II veterans. They may be old, but they can still be pretty tough. So I would not go against what their desires were. It's only after that, I see myself as a repository. We have a decent collection, and we're still filling some gaps, but overall, we're focused most of our collecting activities on kind of the modern era. Things that are interesting to us are things that are directly connected first to 10th Mountain Division soldiers or modern US soldiers of any type, and then help us tell a larger or broader story, something that we can really educate the soldiers with today, to inspire them to live and mirror the morals and the ethics and the valor of our soldiers of the past. All of us probably can talk about some common items that we're probably awash with. My favorite is Ike jackets. I think we probably could outfit the division again with Ike jackets from across the collection. The funny thing is they're probably the most collectible thing because that's the jacket they got when they shipped home. So it was probably the least worn and most readily accessible when they returned home at the end of the war. So unfortunately, we can't take every Ike jacket that we're offered, but there's always opportunity for us to help direct that to somewhere else that can help tell the 10th Mountain Division stories. And the last thing I'll share kind of from a bigger collections perspective, one of the things we all struggle with is the cost, right? We are not unlimited. This stuff takes up space. It takes us resources to preserve it and catalog it and tell the story. So all of us have fairly large collections. We are all still actively collecting, but we are pretty specific on what we're going to take. Large, whole swath collections are very difficult for us to take now, just because we have a moral obligation to take care of those things properly. So we have to do right by our resources. And the 20th pairs of skis can only get us so far in each of our own collections. So that's why we're so cooperative in kind of sharing the wealth across the network. Some big events that are coming out there. I've got the biggest one for me, which is why I don't have any fancy pictures or slides, is we are in the process of physically moving our museum. One of the limitations we've had is we've been inside the Fort Drum military installation, which is not the most easily placed for the average public to visit. So we have completed the construction of a building, and we are in the process of dressing out the exhibits that will be outside the fence line. So you will no longer have to go through the Department of Defense gate to enter the military installation to see our museum. That's going to be huge for us. It's going to greatly increase public access and allow us to tell the story to so many more people. The other big event I'd like to highlight is the last event was from Chris Anthony and his previous film. We've been very fortunate to connect with Chris, and looks like we're going to have him here at Fort Drum for a screening of his new film, Mission Mangart, on 7 June at Fort Drum. We're still working all the details, the locations and things like that, but there's probably going to be some focused events for soldiers, but then there will also be some public events around that. So we're super excited about that because Chris has been doing some great work around the history of the division. You just saw him on Dana's video with one of his stars. So it's going to be a big event for us, and I'm super excited about that. The end of the summer, the last week of August, last couple of days of August, first days of September, we also host Mountain Fest, which is kind of our local celebration for the soldiers. We do all the internal sporting events. There's also a series of memorial events for us here locally. We host the what we call the Gold Star families, so the families of our fallen back to Fort Drum to honor their loved ones. And things along those lines. So that's going to be the end of August, beginning of September, that last week. So that information should be going out through the Descendants organization and the association and the foundation as well. And then if you didn't see it, I would also recommend you go to our social media page. We just world premiered the new version of the 90 Pounds of Rucksack. So we hope you all enjoyed it. We put a lot of good work into it. Our modern 10th Mountain Division band recrafted the lyrics, and we were able to make a music video for it. We think it did a lot to honor the World War II division, but made the song a little bit more accessible, at least for the Army, in public performance. So I would also like to announce a potential new music video will be coming out in July. This is not a remake, but this is a modern song, but still honoring our proud division. So look forward to that in July. And again, I just want to thank everyone for allowing us to participate. There's a real strength in the network of the 10th Mountain Division, formed out of the World War II veterans, but maintained by the descendants and the foundation through the years, that has continued to be felt by the modern division here at Fort Drum. I can speak on that behalf because we benefit so much from all the resources that you share with us. I don't think there's very few buildings on Fort Drum currently that do not have one of Keli's photos hung up in there somewhere, helping us kind of informally remind the soldiers of their World War II brethren and what they have to step up to. So again, I thank you for your time. I look forward to working with all of you, and I stand by for any questions. I'll defer any World War II technical questions to Flint or Dave, but if you have modern questions, I can be your guy because that's kind of our level of expertise. So.